we're very pleased to have on the pulse the country's Minister for Labour and Social Affairs, Ursula von der Leyen from Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you just presented this poverty and wealth report that claims the income gap in Germany has stopped widening. We still would be better off with a minimum wage, would we not?
Well, actually, at the moment being, we have a very robust labour market. We have the lowest youth unemployment rate in Europe, for example. But you're right, the income dropped at the beginning of the decade. We had a lot of labour market reforms. The good thing is, over the last 2 to 3 years, the lowest incomes were rising in a proportion that was higher than the rest of the incomes. So I think we're on the right way. At the moment being, of course, we are discussing, for example, things like minimum wages. And looking at Great Britain, for example, we've seen that you have a commission for minimum wages with employers and trade unions. That's something we think is very attractive.
Yet this is not going to be part of the platform on which your party is going to fight the next general election. The SPD has made it very clear that it will. How much of an impediment do you think this will be from a sort of political point of view, looking at the election coming up in September?
Well, of course, inequalities do play a role, but if you look at the things that people are interested in, it's a matter of jobs. And we have the highest employment rate since ever. Actually, we have 1 million vacant jobs, so the German industry is looking for people to hire. We have the lowest unemployment rate since reunification. And I think this is very convincing for people. Of course, you always have to look at the borders of the labour market. So the debate we have in our government at the moment being how to introduce the right minimum wage, that is to have employers and trade unions negotiate about it and not have a political minimum wage, is for us an important topic in the upcoming campaign we will have.
But Minister, even if we have very few unemployed compared to other countries in the European Union, if people can't actually live off their jobs, we're hearing of anecdotal evidence of people actually having to go to discounted stores because they can't make ends meet and they're in full-time jobs. You have to have a minimum wage. Is this going to be what the election is solely going to be fought on?
Well, we have the debate about the minimum wage. We also have a very interesting debate about the hours that people work, specifically if you look at women in Germany. We have a tradition of part-time work in Germany, specifically with women. This depends because of the school system we have. And I think on the long term, the debate, the election debate will go on how can we improve the conditions, for example, whole-day schools, childcare, but also the possibility not only to work part-time for women, but also to go back to full-time jobs. This will certainly be important in the debate we will have.
Minister, can I ask you whether or not you think we will ultimately have to get to a point where we see quotas for women executives?
Well, I am convinced that quotas are necessary. 10 years ago, I wasn't a friend of quotas because I thought a young generation of women, highly educated, will make their way up to the top of big business, of listed companies. But I saw that the improvement was very slow. So last year we had an improvement of 1%. In the executive boards, we had 4% women at the moment, being in the supervisory boards at 14%, the 200 biggest companies. This is too slow. So my experience is by now we will need quotas, but it will be something we won't need on the long term. You need quotas just to have a critical mass of women in the supervisory boards. I think it's important specifically what kind of what type of companies we have in the international context. And if you look at German companies, a good friend from me from the United States told me, well, you know, corporate Germany is an old white man. And I think this should change. We should be way more diverse, way more international, and of course have men and women. I do not think that women are better than men, but I think the diverse look at the risks and the opportunities is important to be successful.
Thank you. Minister, thank you so much. That was
Thank you so
Ursula
much.
von der Leyen from Berlin.